And now on Nights with Steve Price from the 50 Up Club, Christopher Zinn.
Christopher, good evening to you.
Yes, good evening, Steve.
How's our club going?
By leaps and bounds, not just in the city to surf, because we had a few people
Oh,
doing
yeah.
it.
How did you go? What time did you do?
Well, look, I hate to say that I got the best in 25 years, and that was only due to practice. But I came in under 70 minutes, which I'd never done before. But that's just because of training and a bit of work. But look, it's not impossible, because I would never have thought that was I was going to do that at the beginning of the year. But I did, and I'll tell you, it was a great feeling, great day, even just taking, it's a festival of locomotion, and just seeing all the sorts of people of all ages walking, shuffling, running or whatever. To me, that's a very exciting sight.
Everyone says it's 14 Ks. You well know, and I've done it twice. I've run it once. So I've done it 3 times. I've run it once and walked it twice. It's more than 14 Ks because you've got to dodge everyone.
There is a fair bit of that, and of course there's the up and down, which might not add much in the distance, but certainly does in the perception of the distance. So look, they say it's like a half marathon, which is 21 Ks in terms of the effort that you need to put into it. But I'll tell you, once you glimpse those glittering Pacific blue waters, and it always seems to be a sunny day, all the heartbreak of the hills melts away, and it's just incredible for me. Anyway, it's incredibly exciting.
Well, you've done lots of them, but the first time I did it when I was running, and I sort of ran Heartbreak Hill, but you get up to the top there where you turn right at the top of the hill and head over toward Bondi. You see the water briefly and you go, I'm nearly there. What you don't realise is you've probably got about another 6 or 7 Ks up and down through the back of Dover Heights.
Exactly. And look, I don't know if that's a bit of a metaphor for life when we think that we have something in the bag and then there's always a bit of zigzag that comes first. So,
very good.
You can take what lesson you wish out of that.
I like that. We're talking health insurance, private health insurance, and the dreaded gap tonight. I've got private health insurance. I've always had it. Touch wood, haven't needed to use it very often. Don't get sick. Neither does anyone in the family. But if you are, as we are, our over 50s, that gap can be cruel.
Look, it can be. And there's some research this year that sort of said in terms of the hospital, the average was about $300 and $50 for the extras. But there's plenty of stories, and Choice did some research for this, of people finding with hospitals it was actually over $1,000 and up to $5,000. And essentially the gap is because, Medicare covers some of it and your private health insurers covers some of it, but actually doctors and private hospitals can actually charge what they want. And unless you ask the right questions at the right time, not only can you be hit with the gap, but you can, it can happen as a very nasty surprise, i.e. you didn't know. So, look, I'm afraid it is a flaw in the system. One wishes that there was no gap, but I'm afraid insurance, as we all know, be it house, home, car or whatever, is full of traps for the unwary, and I'm afraid the gap is one that exists in private health insurance, not just in Australia, but in other developed countries as well.
I don't want to be unkind, and you put your Choice hat back on, but I get a sense that the medical health insurance industry tries to make this issue as complicated as possible so that not only mere mortals can't understand it, people who actually study it, it stretches their brain. Whenever I, as a newspaper journalist, was asked to look at the issue of private health insurance, I go, please, not me. It's too complicated. They make it really difficult.
Look, it is, and I think the language that's used, in terms of gaps and schedules and benefits and all the rest of it, doesn't help you actually sort your way through. And in fact, in preparation for this piece, so on the 50 Up Club piece, I've written something about the gap and what you can do to avoid it or avail yourself of information. It does take a bit of information. But having said that, your health fund, if you have one, they're a pretty good starting point. Just one, in terms of their website, but two, calling them up and asking questions, because essentially they can steer you to the hospitals or to the specialists with which they have arrangements which should minimize or mean that there's no gap at all, or in fact give you a cover which actually means that there is no gap or there is a minimal gap. So I would suggest the starting point is knowing more with your fund and what policy you're with. But look, having said that, there's plenty of us, I'm afraid, who have insurance and we think we're covered for X, Y, and Z, and then suddenly go to claim on a heart matter or a mind matter and find that actually is an exclusion and we're not covered for it.
Do you think there needs to be legislation that requires health providers to give you the gap information before you proceed?
Well, I would love that there was greater transparency. And actually, one of the other interesting things in this choice survey was that they found even where people were given information to the gap, it wasn't straightforward or obvious or didn't give them enough information. In fact, a university lecturer wrote an op-ed in the Newcastle Herald, and you'd have thought that's someone who had their head screwed on. But he went in with one of his kids had an accident, and he went into the public hospital. They said, you're privately insured, you can be treated. And he asked, what's the gap? And they went away and they said, actually, we don't know what it's going to be. So he opted for public. So the point is that many people who have private actually go public, which, of course, was the whole point of the private health system with the sticks and carrots to relieve the burden on the public system, because there is no transparency around what the gap will be for them. And I think that's quite, logical move on their behalf. So, yes, I don't know whether it's legislation or market pressure, but unless you get realistic information before any kind of procedure as to what you're going to be up for in terms of the gap, I think that, it does put you in a very difficult position.
Maybe the government doesn't want the gap to be well known, because what will happen is what you just outlined, that most people will head off and go public if they realise that they're going to be, I think the average is nearly $300 per episode, the gap out of pocket. So maybe they don't want to tell you what the gap is in case you end up crowding up the public service.
I think they already are though, and there's plenty of, and in fact we had a very basic private health insurance, but we went public for the birth of 2 kids. You know what? Because I have no complaints. No, it wasn't so much the gap. It was just the public system was very good.
It's so good. It's so good in Australia.
Exactly. So look, we're lucky, and we lived in a place with a great kids hospital. So look, I wouldn't blame anyone for going public if they thought it was going to be better, and the uncertainty over the gap is certainly a real issue. So again, what you need to do is not only ask your fund, but then also ask the specialist, what is the gap? But it doesn't just stop with the specialist. It can also be the anaesthetist or anyone else who is involved.
You're quite right. Yeah. And look, 50 Up Club are going to do a survey on that, so we'll put that up on our website and direct them to us. Thank you, Christopher. I'll talk to you next week.
That's great. Thanks a lot.
Good on you. Christopher Zinn.